Hi guys, and welcome to our very first DeckTech episode on Aetherdrift. If you've seen any champion on Reddit or Twitter, whatever it is, you've probably seen this guy, Hashaton, Scarab's Fist. That says whenever you discard a creature card, you may pay free. If you do, create a tap token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. So whenever you discard a creature card, whatever its mana value, just pay 3 mana and you can put it on the battlefield. So this means we can cheat really big creatures into play whenever we discard. So how are we gonna discard? Add in looting effects with cards like Kitsa or Rona that just say draw a card, discard a card. And whenever you do this, you can put in all the Eldrazi, all the big cards that black, white and black or even Esper has to offer. Seeing as this card is only 2 mana and discarding is 3 mana, we don't need a lot of ramp. So we can either do this aggro or we can do this mid-range. But if we want to have enough threats, there's going to be a lot of slots with the big guys, not leaving us a lot of slots for ramp, for looting, and for card advantage, of course. So we're gonna build this mid-range. Before we get further into the video, I would like to remind you that most of the people watching this aren't subscribed. It is a really easy way to help the channel out, help us grow and help us to keep making content like this one. Thank you very much. This means, as you can see, we have 22 of the big guys. We have about 4 board wipes. We have 4 enabler cards. Then we only have 33 lands. That's because of course, the looting cards. We have 13 cards that can loot. Those are either 2 or 3 mana, so we can get them down pretty fast after cast our commander and then cheat out the big guys. We have a couple of protection pieces, we have a couple of reanimation pieces, and we have quite a lot of removal. Also because we can put this on creatures. So using Hashaton, if I hope I pronounce it correctly, we can just do it whenever we want and our opponent is not really gonna know what kind of creature we are gonna cheat in. So first of all, we're gonna loot. We're gonna have creatures, we're gonna have instants and artifacts that are all saying draw a card, discard a card. If we have multiple of those, even better. We're gonna cycle through a lot of cards and we're gonna have multiple instances of our commander's trigger available. Ideally those are 1 mana, but yeah, they're not really present a lot in 1 mana cards. So most of them are gonna be 2 mana, like Kitsa, like Rona, that also has a backside, which is pretty cool. And also says whenever you cast a legendary spell, untap Rona. And the backside is like a Phyrexian Obliterator that says whenever a source deals damage to Rona, that source's controller exiles a card from their hand at random. If it's a land card, you might put it onto the battlefield under your control. Otherwise, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. So that's pretty cool, but most of the time we'll just use the loot. Matsalantli also has a pretty cool backside for 4 mana, and by tapping it we can transform Matsalantli, but only if there are 4 or more permanent types among cards in your graveyard. I've playtested this deck a couple of times and noticed that is pretty hard, because as you'll see here, we'll only have 3 enchantments. We do have a lot of artifacts, creatures and land, of course, but hitting the enchantment is quite hard. But if you do hit it, you can tap it to add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. So 10 permanents in your graveyard, 10 mana. It's as easy as that, and you'll easily hit 10. So transforming this is gonna make sure you're gonna be able to activate the commander's ability at least 4 times in 1 turn cycle. And then there's also Ledger Shredder that well, you can't tap it to loot, but it says whenever a player casts their 2nd spell each turn, Ledger Shredder connives. And conniving means draw a card, discarding a card. And if that is a non-land, so a playable card, then you get to put a counter on Ledger Shredder. Also, Bag of Holding is pretty cool, because whenever you discard a card, you exile that card from your graveyard. So whenever you discard a card, there's going to be 2 triggers. Your commander's trigger and the Bag of Holding triggers. Let's say we first resolve the commander's trigger. So we make a copy of it and we put it into your graveyard. Then the Bag of Holding triggers. You exile that card from your graveyard. So you now already have a copy. And then for 4 mana, and by tapping it, you can sacrifice the Bag of Holding to return all cards exiled with Bag of Holding to their owner's hand. So the creatures you already have on the battlefield, but as a copy of 4/4, you get them back into your hand, and you get to do all the shenanigans all over again. So we got to loot a couple of cards, and we also have our commander on the battlefield. Now the real shenanigans start. Let's just get into the good stuff. You, of course, want to see what kind of creatures we can cheat into. Well, those are some of my favorites. There's a lot to choose from. I'm not gonna play Eldrazi because most of them need cast triggers, and we don't want the cast triggers. Also because Eldrazi are colorless, so whenever you play a commander that can cheat, you're always gonna see the same Eldrazi. I do not want to do this. I want to really utilize the black, white and blue colors that we have. So I will only cheat out creatures in Esper color. So we have Agent of Treachery that can steal our opponent's stuff. We have Ancient Silver Dragon to draw a lot of cards. We have a board wipe in Arcfiend. We have another destroy piece. We have Astral Dragon that just creates copies of the best non-creature permanent out there. If there's a Rhystic Study, if there's a Smothering Tithe, if maybe someone has an annoying procession, we make 2 annoying processions. So the next time we put down a token, we'll get 3 of those tokens. Also, we can just make everything indestructible. We can steal stuff. With Pelincron, we can untap up to 7 lands. So if you have 6 mana open, at least, you cheat down Pelincron, tap all your mana. Now you have 3 mana to spare. So you can now cheat in another 3 creatures instead of 2 to keep this going. We have Metamai to give us extra turns. We have Masker Worm to board wipe. We have Gearhawk to board wipe. We have Consecrated Swings to draw us a lot of cards. We have Dream Trawler that can discard whenever we want to. Of course, we have all the loot effects, but Dream Trawler will really make sure that we can do this whenever we like. We have Herald of Eternal Dawn that says you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. And yeah, as I said, we can flash this in whenever we like. So yeah, that's pretty good. Then we have Shieldred and Rhea Dawnbringer that lets us reanimate at our upkeep. Upkeep usually isn't that good because opponents have a whole turn cycle to get rid of this creature. We'll just do it in the last end step before our upkeep, so we can do it straight away. And of course, the other Shieldred has the Rise of the Dark Realms on mode number 3. If we got our engine going, we also have a couple of enabler cards like Metamai that will give us extra turns, like Oertak that says if 1 or more creature tokens would be created under your control, read times that many of those tokens are created instead. So instead of 1, you get 3 tokens, which is not bad to have. Sarah's Emissary says when ETBs choose a card type, you and creatures you control have protection from the chosen card type. So you could mention creature. All your creatures get protection, meaning they can't be damaged, but they can't also be blocked by your opponent's creatures. So yeah, they can die in combat, but they are also unblockable. Yeah, Wonder, always good to have if you're gonna discard, as long as it's in your graveyard and you control an island. Creatures you control have flying. And Bloodletter of Aklazoth says if an opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead. Finally, this card is smaller than the token you're gonna make. The token you're gonna make is always gonna be a 4/4, so it on its own already hits for 8, which is pretty neat. After we loot a lot, we're still gonna need card advantage because looting is more like card selection. It's not gonna add cards to our hand. Ancient Silver Dragon is probably gonna draw a lot of cards. Astral Dragon isn't exactly card advantage, but most of the time I would copy cards that give me card advantage, like Rhystic Study, like Mystic Remora, all those shenanigans. So I'm gonna put it on a card advantage. Bag of Holding is gonna give all our cards back. Consecrated Swings, whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. Obviously, every opponent draws cards in their draw step, so you're gonna draw a lot of cards. Dream Trawler whenever attacks, draw a card. And Jace's Archivist is like a Windfall, but on a creature. And Nezahal says whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, draw a card. You also have no maximum hand size. And we can discard 3 cards to return Nezahal to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So if someone tries to remove it or there's a board wipe, we can get it back at the next end step. Sphinx of the Second Sun says at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, you get an additional beginning phase after this phase. The beginning phase includes untap, upkeep, and draw. I have played this card for years and I've played it wrong for about the same amount of years because it says at the beginning of your post-combat main phase. So a little weird, but it actually says after your post-combat main phase. So after you've done your combat, you can play all your stuff, and if you're done, you get the untap, upkeep, draw. But immediately after the draw step, there's your end step. So you cannot cast spells that you've drawn in your new draw step and after you've untapped all your lands. So you're gonna need ways to spend this mana on instant speed. Of course, our commander is built around tapping in our opponent's turns, so this won't matter. And it is just the perfect card. Teferi's Ageless Insight says whenever you draw a card, except the first one you draw in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. Remember the looters? That says draw a card, discard a card. Whenever you have Teferi's Ageless Insight on the battlefield, they do give card advantage, because they're now gonna give 2 cards and only discard 1. So last year I've built a DeckTech around Velgavoth and I got to show how incredibly strong this card is. It is a 9/9 flyer with lifelink and ward that says sacrifice 3 non-land permanents. But it also says if a card you didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. During your turn you may play cards exiled with Velgavoth. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. So if creatures die, if people are gonna mill, it's gonna be exiled instead, and you can play those cards, but you get to pay life instead of mana. So you can cheat out a lot of things on your opponent's side. Obviously it doesn't draw you cards directly, but it gives access to a whole lot of extra cards. And then there's Windfall, which is just always good, but especially if you have a Teferi's Ageless Insight, it's even better. Because Windfall says each player discards his or her hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So if someone has 6 cards in hand, every player is gonna discard their hand and gonna draw 6. If you have Teferi's Ageless Insight, you're gonna draw 12 cards. A neat thing when you are playing a lot of looters is to give them haste. Crashing Drawbridge can give our creatures haste until end of turn. Lightning Greaves can just give 1 creature haste. Since we are playing a lot of looters, meaning we get to go through a lot of cards in our deck, we can downsize the amount of lands we play. I kept it quite conventional because I really dislike missing my land drops, but I suppose you could also go to 28 or 30 cards maybe if you add some looters. I found that most looters are gonna be 3 mana or even 4, and I tried to play as many as I could on 2 mana, so that's why I didn't change some extra lands for extra looters. Now, as we saw, there are some pretty cool creatures that are gonna give protection. Evasin, Airtight can just counter target spell activated ability or triggered ability. The same for Overcharged Amalgam. Herald just says you can't lose the game. Lightning Greaves obviously gives Shroud. Mana Drain, I always go for Mana Drain because yeah, it's just way too good. Narset's Reversal is one of my favorite cards in blue that says copy target instant or sorcery spell, then return it to its owner's hand. You may choose new targets for the copy. So if someone plays a Cyclonic Rift, just take the Cyclonic Rift to your hand and I will cast the Cyclonic Rift. How about that? Now we are a mid-range deck, so of course we're gonna need some ramp. There's just the usual cards in the Arcane Signet, Orzhov Signet, Sol Ring, Talisman, Dimir Signet, Felberstone. I have, which I would say the two best rituals for when you only have like 2 mana up, so your opponent is gonna think you can't use the commander's ability. Now you gain at least 1 extra mana, so you can actually use the ability. I really surprised them. Same for Dark Ritual, of course. And Lofo, I really like Lofo. Whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, you lose 1 life, create a treasure token. Now there's also what I like to call Ramp Harder. Burnished Heart, if you can cheat it out with your commander, you're not losing a card, and then you can pay another 3 to search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. So basically like a really expensive Sol Ring that taps for the colors you need. Matsaland, the backside, as we said, is very good. Palinkron, when it comes into play, untap up to 7 lands. This way, like the rituals, you can also surprise your opponents by hitting more activations than they hoped. Songs of the Damned is also a ritual, but it is a conditional ritual, so it needs creature cards in your graveyard, and if you have those, for example, let's say 5, then you really gain a huge amount of extra mana. Now there are some reanimation spells. Abyssal Harvester says when tap it and exile target creature card from a graveyard that was put there this turn. You create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a nightmare in addition to its other types. Then exile all other nightmare tokens you control. So if you discarded a card, now your commander has the trigger to pay 3 mana and make a 4/4 token. Abyssal Harvester says about the same, but you can only make essentially 1 token at a time. But now you have 2 copies of the card you discarded. Agadeem's Awakening is a land, but it also says return from your graveyard to the battlefield any number of target creature cards that each have a different converted mana cost, X or less, and it doesn't come untapped, so it's just always good. Rhea says at the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card, which is the same for Shieldred. Then we have the other Shieldred, which is essentially at the 3rd chapter of the saga, a Rise of the Dark Realms. Then we have Tortured Existence that says pay 1 black mana, choose and discard a creature card from your hand, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So you discard a creature card that you are going to make a copy of, and then you return another creature card. So you can keep on going as long as you have a lot of mana, and it's not infinite, but it's really annoying. There is 1 card that can go infinite, and that is of course the Palinkron, because it can untap up to 7 lands. So Tortured Existence requires 1 black, and your commander requires 2 and a blue. So if you have 4 mana, of which 1 black and 1 blue, then you have infinite ETBs of the Palinkron. But then if you have just 1 mana more, you can essentially make infinite mana. So that's a pretty neat combo that I would add, because, well, both of the cards are just really good in this deck. And obviously if you have the infinite combo, it's pretty cool that you can just put all the cards that you like, make infinite copies of them, and win that way. Then we have the removal, and finally we have some sweet removal pieces as well. And if you've ever seen one of my tutorials, I always say that deck building gets really magical if you can enhance your theme in all your fundamentals. So removal, card draw, ramp, board wipe, those are the fundamentals. And removal, I try to stick as much of the creatures, the big silly creatures that I could in this category. So we have Marauder, we have Treachery that steals a permanent, we have Ashen Rider that exiles target permanent, we have Kega that gains control of target creatures when it dies. Shieldred says when enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. And Ertai says when enters the battlefield, counter target spell activated ability or triggered ability, its controller draws a card, but it also says destroy another target creature or planeswalker, its controller draws a card. And well, if our commander is not doing the thing that we want it to do, of course we need some interaction just on instant speed. So we have Fierce Guardianship, we have Mana Drain, we have Counterspell, we have Narset's Reversal, and one of my favorite removal pieces, Tragic Slip, that says target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, but if a creature died this turn, that creature gets -13/13 until end of turn instead. So there you have it, a quick deck tech on Hashaton Scarab's Fist. I think this card is gonna be the most popular commander that we will see this set. Every set has like one commander that is just completely nuts. Every set has just one commander that is completely nuts. Every set has at least one commander that's completely nuts and that everyone is talking about. And I am pretty sure that this one is it. Because whenever you discard a card, you make a copy of it, meaning you are not essentially down a card because you already put it on the battlefield. And you only do this for 3 mana, so you're cheating in cards and you're also gaining card advantage. This is just so much value without too much limitations that I think after you've seen it a couple of times at the battlefield, it is probably gonna be a destroy target creature on site. That was the deck tech for my favorite commander of this set. And it's even the first deck tech I'm doing. I hope you like it, and I really am curious what kind of big baddies you are gonna put in your Hashaton Scarab's Fist commander deck. For now, I would like to thank you and see you in the next Aetherdrift deck tech episode.